I'm still trying to get my head around to this day, but it got me to thinking when putting together this webinar, the master key, you get a lot of webinars offering you the key to this and the key to that, but there's something we've got to do with a key. It doesn't open a lock by itself. You have to turn it. You actually have to do something. So we're going to give you the secret, the master key to business development very quickly today, and then the secret behind the secret. Again, the typical elements that we don't see talked about and discussed very often. So these keys that get offered, let's have a look at what we're going to do today. I've got 60 minutes. We're going to do hopefully deliver 10 pieces of real value for your practice. We can put in straight away. We've got 4 polls we're going to be able to run to get your view, because that's probably the most essential part of today. And there's one underlying rule that I'd like us to remember and take away from this session. Okay, so what is this key? Well, it's nothing new. It's nothing groundbreaking, or it's simply overcoming a condition called FTI, failure to implement. That is where we always go wrong with business development. That's not a case of not doing any. You know, lots of firms go out there and market and then try and sell to their prospects, and you know, it's not a case of that's not being implemented. It's knowing what to do and implementing it in the correct order and in the correct way. Okay, so we're going to give the secret away, so the master key to business development immediately. It's overcoming failure to implement. And I can tell you from the work I do with practices throughout the UK and some in the US, is that if you actually do something with what you know, you've automatically beaten 95% of your competitive firms. I'm going to say that again. If you do something with what you know, as in getting in front of prospects on a regular basis, proactively, without them being referred into us, you are ahead of 95% of your competition. I know that because I see that. I've seen it for the last 14 years. It hasn't changed. Most of us still rely on those referrals coming in the door to build our practices and our portfolios, and we do a little bit of networking, a little bit of marketing, but a proactive push, measured, monitored, and scientifically created, is something that most firms out there don't do. So by overcoming the failure to implement what you learn on things like this webinar, you beat the vast majority of firms you'll ever come up against. The secret to overcoming failure to implement is by being accountable to someone. Now that may be being accountable to your other partners, your fellow partners in the firm. If you are a senior manager, that may be being accountable to the partner to whom you report to. If you're a sole practitioner, or if you don't find being accountable to your partners helpful, then you can be accountable to your partner, spouse, other half. Personally, I find that gets me to implement most things in my life. If I know that my wife is going to be holding me accountable, it tends to get me to do things. So being accountable to someone gives us that push, that someone that we want to make sure is impressed by what we do, that we don't want to fall foul of. You know, that's how we overcome a failure to implement in a very, very simple way. But as I say, that would be a very short webinar if that was all there is. And at least where I come from, a key is one thing. It helps us, it opens the lock, but you've got to turn it. You've actually got to do something with that key to unlock the door and get into where you're going. Okay? So the secret is doing it, but the secret behind that is being set up to be able to do it. And again, because business development is quite an area of unfamiliarity for a lot of CPA firms, then that's generally not in place. That set up on and knowing how to do it generally isn't in place in too many firms that I come across, at least. And that's what we'd like to give you today. So the 10 pieces of value that I promised at the start of this are going to come up as we cover them. So the master key, we just do it to overcome failure to implement by being accountable. Okay? But there's a familiar cry that we talked about on Thursday's webinar, which is that I hear this a lot from practitioners. Oh, you know, we go out, Martin, and businesses like what we have to say, but ultimately they just don't want to change their accountant. We looked at this in brief on Thursday, and we're going to look at it in a bit more detail here now. This phrase is something I don't like to hear because it's not true. And that part that you now see in red, they like what we have to say. Well, clearly they don't like what you have to say enough to overcome the barriers they have to changing. Okay? And if they don't want to change in reality, so they don't really like what you have to say that much, why? Why don't they want to change? Well, there's a number of reasons why it could be. Are they professional time wasters? Are they people who see professionals just for, you know, the sake of seeing them to see what else is out there? Are they too polite to tell you what they really think? I don't know if that's the case over in the US. It certainly is the case here occasionally, where this great British politeness that we have here inbuilt in our culture means that we don't actually tell someone what we really think. Maybe the prospect has discovered a dark secret about you and your firm, a negative press article from 5 years ago that we thought was buried. Well, it's come back on a Google search and they found it. Maybe we're being perceived as being too expensive. Or do the prospect just fail to be compelled to go through the firing of a long-term associate in terms of their CPA and advisor in order to receive the value that we offer? Here's my experience so far in the 14 years I've been working with CPA firms. You don't get very many professional time wasters. There are one or two out there, don't get me wrong, but good quality marketing generally weeds them out. And so they become a very small percentage of the total number of prospects you'll see in any given year, month, or any other time period. So you can come up against time wasters, but not very often. That's not a great reason why somebody doesn't want to change their accountant despite liking what you have to say. Are they too polite? Well, no. Generally, if somebody sees enough value in what we're saying to them to be willing to come on board, they're not going to give an excuse not to come on board. You know, so generally speaking, that's not a case that we come across a lot. That's generally not the reason why. Have they discovered a dark secret about us and our firm? Well, it's possible, but let's face it, it's very, very unlikely, and it's very rare. So as a general rule, I can't submit that as being authoritative either. Are you perceived as being too expensive? Well, yeah, that happens, but it masquerades as too expensive. It's not the real reason. The real reason is below it on your screen right now. They will call it too expensive, but what they're saying is we do not see enough value to make it worth our while divorcing ourselves from our long-term CPA advisor, even if that CPA isn't very good, even if that CPA doesn't meet our needs, even if that CPA's service hasn't improved for the last 20 years, even though the price has gone up. But we still don't see enough value from you to be able to prepare to consider changing. And when they feel like that, they call it too expensive. It's this one. That's generally the reason why firms don't change their accountant. Not because they don't want to, not because they can't afford to, but because they do not see enough to overcome the issues that are associated with changing. So the master key to business development is by overcoming failure to implement, just doing it, getting on with it. But knowing how to deliver enough value to overcome those obstacles of changing, that breaking away from the comfortable advisor, is the second part. That's what we do with the key. So I do apologize, I've got one ahead there. So we've got to be set up to win. We've got to know how this key, overcoming failure to implement, can be used and turned in the lock to open the door into those clients that we want to act for. Okay? So what I'd like to do now is to do a quick exercise that I want you just to do in your own heads, really. There's a bottle here, and that's a clear glass bottle that you're looking at there. what I'd like you to do is to stare at that bottle and make it in your mind a green bottle. Okay? And as you're doing that, I'd like to figuratively ask you, not actually ask you, but figuratively ask you, what kind of green you've now got in your mind. Some of us might have an emerald green, some of us might have a tree green, some of us might have a neon green, generally things that we associate green with. Okay? And generally speaking, you get a whole range of answers. You know, if this was a room, if this was a live seminar today and we were asking what kinds of greens people had come up with in their minds, they would be telling us about all different shades of green. But the bottom line is, I only said green. I said, please make the bottle green. And what I believe you've probably done in that exercise just now is thrown your own perception on it and given it your own shade, even though I only said green. Okay? And that is a very simplistic way of giving you my third piece of value. Perception is reality to the prospective client that we go and see. So in a business development exercise where we're getting in front of new potential work that has not been referred to us, when we go and see them, it does not matter what the reality of our value proposition is. It matters how they perceive our value proposition. And therefore, to be effective in winning work, what we must do is understand how we can positively influence their perception of us. Okay, now, very kindly, Damien made reference to something that we did last Thursday, which was the first sale, and how we influence that perception of our value proposition is by getting the first sale right first. So we're going to go into the first sale, but Damien, at this stage, could I ask you just to run the first of our polls today, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a question. Let's launch that there, and we need these for CPE. Do you see selling as something you can't do? So maybe, Martin, you can explain that question a little bit better, but do you see selling as something that you can't do?
Certainly. One of the many myths that we have in the profession is that because we've never been trained to sell, and because we struggle to sell, this means that we cannot sell. That's not true. That's a myth. And it's simply a case of not understanding how to do it. Right now, I can't fly a fighter plane, and right now, I can't complete a tax return in anything like the degree of ability that my audience can. But I know that I have a reasonable level of intelligence and I can learn to do it once I know the framework and the process and I get the process right. So that's the question there.
Okay.
Do we feel that
Martin, just to give you the feedback, the good thing is that 87% have said no, that they don't see selling as something they can't do, and we've gone 90-10. 90% have said no, and that final 10% have been in the don't know, not sure. So nobody said yes, so I think that's a promising sign. So I'll hand back to you.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Damien. That's fantastic. I'm glad we believe we can do it. What I'd like to do then is to tackle something that we don't often talk about. We touched on it again on last Thursday, but a little bit more detail today. And that is the first sale. Who do we sell to first? And the reality is that we can't convince anyone of something that we can't convince ourselves of, because it gets spotted straight away. We see it in the other person. We see the insincerity. We see the self-doubt. We read it in their body language. Okay, and I used a very obscure quote, which is this one from a key person in the French Revolution. No man has the ability to step outside of the shadow of his own character. How we apply that to the first sale is that the more we like ourselves, the more we have the ability to convey that to others, not as cockiness or overconfidence, but as assuredness. So if we want to be a successful salesperson as well as a successful CPA, we need to be a successful person in life, generally speaking. So we are our first client. If we will buy us, we've got a good chance of other people being prepared to buy into us. And that's what people buy in professional services, don't forget. It's not the services that we're delivering, that's the means to the end. They're buying the relationship. Do I like this person? Could I get on with this person? Do I want this person to advise my business? So we are the first client. And how do we determine that? I've put together some things that we might want to consider that may or may not be appropriate for you, but hopefully they will be. So when I say be a successful person in order to be a successful salesman, do we like how we've treated our family members since the last time we were in the office talking to a client? So we're going to go back out and see a prospect now, or they're going to come and see us. Do we like how we behaved with our family since the last time we had to sell anything to anyone? Okay. Have we been striving to hit any personal goals that we may have set ourselves? In January, of course, there's always New Year's resolutions, and generally involves losing weight or earning more money or changing jobs or something like that, and it's usually gone by March. So if we are striving to hit personal goals that we've set ourselves, regardless of whether we're hitting them or not, if we're making the effort, that generally instills a sense of pride within ourselves. Yeah, we're doing something about this. Yeah, I'm being the kind of person I want to be. And that translates in the enthusiasm and the assuredness that you present yourself with to a prospective client. How have we dealt with our employees and clients recently? In a way we'd be proud of if it was shown back to us on a film reel. We would be happy with what we saw. What we did when no one can see us, you know? How is our personal level of integrity? What we think about. All of these things, believe it or not, intangible as they are, translate into how we are perceived. And their perception is their reality. So it's the only thing we need to worry about. Okay? The way we present ourselves visually. Are we a shirt and tie? Are we a little bit more casual than that? Do we shave? Do we not shave? How do we look? And if we were meeting us for the first time, what would be our first impression of the person who walks through the door? Okay? So how do we present ourselves visually? How do we present ourselves verbally? You know, do we mutter? Do we slur our speech for whatever reason? Do we enunciate very clearly? Do we, you know, gesticulate? Are we very animated as a character? These are all things that just go into the general mix of how we perceive ourselves and therefore how our clients perceive us. The work we do, when we talk about being able to solve a client's problems, are we saying that because we want to say it because we think it's what the potential client wants to hear from us, or are we just giving it as a statement of fact? Because we know we have an absolute library of case studies where we've done tremendous work for clients, and we can pull them out at random. Okay? Do we like ourselves to the extent that if we met us, we'd be impressed? Okay? And to tie all those together in terms of the business that we're going to see and our own personal conduct, how much preparation we've invested into this meeting. Do we like how much preparation we've invested into this meeting? Because believe it or not, those are all factors in how we're perceived. And it's very rarely talked about when we talk about business development. But people buy people and people buy relationships. The services that we offer are the means to the end. Therefore, all of these things, as intangible as they are, go into creating a very strong first impression and getting off on the right foot. Fourth piece of value, therefore, is to close the first sale on a daily basis. Being a successful person according to our own measurements of that and our own goals and our own standards, different for everyone. If we're comfortable with us, we're likely to be very comfortable. If we understand our value, we're likely to be able to convey that value in front of a prospect. That's a huge part of successful business development, but not often talked about. Damien, at this point, can we run the second poll, please?
Yep, certainly can. So the second poll is, let's launch that there. Do you feel the word selling has an unhelpful stigma attached to it? So just interested to get everyone's feedback there. Do you feel the word selling has an unhelpful stigma attached to it? And we'll just see what people respond with. We'll give it another couple of seconds just as we wait for everyone to vote. And again, if you can just make sure you do contribute, vote, it helps for issuing CPE. So 90% voted. We'll keep it open for 5 more seconds, Martin. Looks like we've got actually a split 70% have said yes. Do you feel the word selling has an unhelpful stigma attached to it? And the 30% have said no. Thankfully, no one's unsure. They've made a decision, so we'll close it there with 100% voted. 70% have said yes, Martin, and 30% have said no.
Thanks very much, Damien. That's much appreciated. So for the 70%, therefore, who may feel that there is a stigma attached, when we close the first sale daily, the relationship with ourselves has to be strong because we're building a relationship with other people when we're business developing. So therefore, can I change the word selling in your minds to one of two things, whichever one you prefer? Either relationship building or dating. And last Thursday we used dating as the word because it is essentially a process of building a relationship that's going to last forever. And that's what we want to do with our clients. We don't want them for a year unless they're particularly hard work. We want them for as long as possible. We want those recurring fees coming in. It's how we build our own personal wealth. So therefore, when we close that first sale daily, let's think about, therefore, building relationships as part of a business development exercise. Now, with Damien's kind permission here, I have just want to throw in something before we go on to the next stage of what we do. A quick commercial break. Actually, no, I'm going to leave that till later thinking about it. So the next thing I want to do, therefore, is to see, okay, that's all the intangible stuff. What's the tangible stuff? How do we actually go about unlocking this lock with our key? We're implementing, Martin, we're doing what you ask us to do, we're getting stuck into it, but what do we actually do? Well, the first stage is to have what I call an opportunity dump. So we pull in from all sources that we can possibly think of, and I'm going to give you 7 sources here today, everything that we could possibly look at as a potential new client for our firm. Here's the first one, okay? What happens if we look at all the proposals or quotes that we sent out in the last 5 years that we did not win, okay? Even if we did 2 or 3 a year, then we've still got quite a pipeline immediately of those that we wanted to win but we did not win. Taking those proposals over the last 5 years, what's the total value of them? What were we quoting? $3,000, $4,000, $10,000, $20,000 a year? And therefore, if we were to win, if we have won those, what difference would that have made to our top and bottom lines this year, had we have had them? Would that have allowed us to achieve our entire business development growth goal for this year just by winning the lost ones? Or would it make a significant contribution? So what kind of difference would winning them have made? Okay. And out of those, how many did we keep in touch with? Okay. So if they were prepared to talk to us and they were prepared to consider changing to us, how many of them, by turning us down, found what they were looking for somewhere else? And if even 100% of them found what they were looking for somewhere else other than our firm, how many of them, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, and 1 year later, are still happy with what they found? Is the firm they went to upholding their original promises? Did they stay with their existing firm? Do their problems still exist and are just exacerbated now? They're just worse than they were. How do we know? Have we continued those relationships? And if we haven't, well, there are our first calls right away. There are our first marketing calls. We can make those calls. We met with them. We know them. We have the right to speak to them. This isn't cold. Straight away we have an opportunity there to put together a lot of proposals. Okay? So that opportunity dump can come from lots of different sources. And I'm going to go into the next stage as to what other sources we can use. But that next stage after we've closed the first sale is to have an opportunity dump exercise where we pull in everything. Okay? The second stage is then the grading of those opportunities. So each firm on this webinar today may have their own criteria for what is a grade A client to them. Typically, a grade A client might be one that's the right size of business for your firm, fits in well with the portfolio that you already act for. It might be the right kind of people that you have an empathy with or a rapport with, your kind of people. It might be the right sort of work that they're asking you to carry out on their behalf. And importantly, it might be the right level of fees, meaning that the work that you carry out is very profitable for your firm. And it might be the right geography, in that you don't have to travel too far, it's a local business, it's one that's serviced very comfortably without tremendous overhead being added as a result. And grade B then might just have the geography missing, or it might have the fees missing or something like that. And the C's and the D's and the E and so on until we get rid of all the criteria we want altogether. So when we have that opportunity dump, we need to put in then, what are they? A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever works for us. What are they? And then organize our prospects by which ones we want to go after first, the grade A's or the number ones. And another way in which we can evaluate both the lost proposals and ones that we might be trying to win at this moment in time is to use something that I call the account system. Now, full disclosure here, I use the account system myself, and it's something that allows us to get a real feel for how likely we are to win that work. Okay? But before I go into that, I'm just going to do that commercial break I promised a little bit earlier on, because Damien very kindly allows me to talk about an initiative that I'm working on right now. And an initiative that I'm working on right now is a research initiative for future practice leaders. And this is something that we call the Next Generation Research. It's going to be launched next month. It's already actually in process. It's already we have a number of firms, 48 firms currently signed up to it, and we're going to be increasing that more and more. And the reason I'm advising you about this is because the more contributors to our research that we can get, the more authoritative and definitive our findings become. There is no financial outlay of any kind here. What we're talking about and what I'm asking you for is for you to become one of our recommended professionals, because by investing in this, your time, which is 15-minute sessions times 4 a year, so 1 hour of your time a year, on critical practice development issues, you obviously demonstrate yourself as being somebody who's investing time and effort in preparing the next generation, which is where this research goes to. And as a result, we'll put you on here on our page and give you the ability for firms who come and have a look and businesses who come and have a look to be able to click through to your sites there. And like I say, nothing involved in that other than your willingness to participate. So if you would like to participate in our research, we would love to have you there. And in exchange, as a thank you for doing that, what we're saying is that a professional selling teleconference will be set up for your next generation team, or indeed your existing generation team, according to what's appropriate, completely free of charge, and for 1 hour as a thank you for the 1 hour that you give us throughout the year on research. So if you'd like to take us up on that, we'd love you to do so. We just need an email to martin@upwardspiralpartnership.co.uk, and there we go. And then we'll get in touch and we'll set that up. And like I say, we'll get your logo on the site there, and people can know that these are firms that walk the talk. So, back to the account system. So let's keep things moving upwards. The account system, as I say, is something I use to understand how likely I am to win or lose a prospect. And it's not complicated, but it takes a while to get used to. So it's an 8-pronged system. There are 8 grades or marks that you apply to any given prospect. So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like to think about a prospect that you have recently won or recently lost or currently trying to win, and think about it from this point of view. Okay, in terms of what they're asking for or what they're looking for, do you have the answer? Does your firm have the technical solution to their needs? If that is the case, if you do, give yourself a mark of 10. If you haven't, don't pursue the sale any further. You're not going to get the prospect, but give yourself a 0. Okay? Do they have the cash to spend with your firm for the level of fees that you want to bring on board? Do they have that cash? Can they afford you? If they can, give yourself a 10. Is there anybody else in the decision-making process in this potential client that you've got to convince other than the person you're currently talking to? If there is no one else that you need to convince, give yourself a 10. If there are other people that still need to be talked to, give yourself a 0. Is there only your firm, apart from their existing advisor, the potential client's existing advisor, is there only your firm in the hunt for this new work as far as you know? If it's a straight decision for that potential client between their existing advisor and moving to you, give yourself a 10. If you're in a fight and a race with other people, often called a beauty parade, give yourself a 0. Is it the kind of work that you want to undertake? You know, is it compliance work that you really don't want any more of, low profitability? Or is it tremendous consulting assignments that you're very excited about and is high profitability? If it's something you want to undertake, give yourself a 10. Does this potential client that you're talking to see the necessity in using you? Do they understand the need to change, or are they just, you know, testing the water? If they, not do we understand their need to change, if they understand their need to change, give yourself a 10. Do we have the timing right? Do we know when our next meeting is going to be with them? Not a phone call, not email, but do we have our next meeting? Do we know when the decision is going to be made? If we do, give ourselves a 10. If we don't, give ourselves a 0. And are we talking to the person right now who can sign this deal and come and join us? Are they the signatory? If they are, 10. If they're not, 0. And then what we do with those 8 points, and it only adds up to 8 because there's always going to be 20% of factors that can influence whether we win a client or not that we can do nothing about one way or another, and they're out with our control, so we can't legislate for them. But what we do then is we analyze our sale according to how we scored. So you look there, we have the prospects, companies A, B, and C, and across we have the 8 indicators that make up accounts, and then we've got our 10s or 0s in the place. Now in this one I've given an example of here, you can see that I'm claiming that the prospect does not see a real urgency to change, and I'm not talking to the person who'd sign off the deal anyway. So in order to have the best chance, i.e. an 80% chance of winning that deal, I would need to correct those 2 and turn them into 10s. I'd need to get them to feel the urgency, and I'd need to get in front of the person who can authorize the deal. But even then, it's still only 80%. But by using this system, we can start to see how much work we've got in the pipeline, how much is likely to come in as a result, and which ones we should be working on and spending most of our time on first. So in other words, we save a lot of billable time by not chasing lost causes, because the grading shows us that we've got a very small chance of winning them. And what I would say is that if that A, that first A, is ever a 0, don't bother completing the rest of the exercise. If we don't have the answer for them, let's not pretend that we have. So there's something, hopefully, that you can use on your opportunity dump that allows you to start working out, of all these opportunities I've got now, which ones should I touch first? That's the method. Okay? So we make those calls to our first set, we grade them using our A's, B's, C's, and D's, or our 1, 2, 3s, 4s, and our accounts system. Accounts is just the acronym I come up with. Please feel free to modify that to whatever you're comfortable with. Now, next I mentioned that there would be other sources that we could bring into our opportunity dump. Okay? One of them is referrals. Okay? Let's look at all referral sources. Our friends, our family, the bank, the law firm that we think refers a lot to us, but when we investigate it, it actually doesn't. Okay? Let's collect all our referral sources. Let's look at everything they've referred. Let's look at the last time they actually referred anything to us. And there's our next set of calls to make. Because it may well be that we've referred a lot out and got little in return. So what we need to do there then is say, okay, we need to have a call with this guy, or we need to have a lunch with this lady, or we need to do whatever we need to do to start getting that pipeline moving again, because they were supposed to refer to us, and they're not doing, or they're referring lots to us. We need to reciprocate. But that is the next part of our opportunity dump, our referral sources. After that, we've got lost prospects, we've got referrals, we then have ex-clients. Okay? Let's face it, whether we like it or not, we lose some clients that we really wish we hadn't lost. Also, we lose clients that we're delighted to see the back of, and they couldn't leave fast enough for us. But we'll have a client loss list, especially in a multi-partner firm. Let's take a look at those ex-clients. Let's take a look at why they left. Let's take a look if there was any reason why we shouldn't have let them leave, or whether it was our own fault, why we let them leave, and could we win them back? Again, like the lost prospects. Are they happy where they are now? Do we know? Have we kept in touch? We had a good relationship. Can we talk? Can we do lunch? What can we do? There's our next stage, ex-clients. Our fifth stage are prospects that we never got to refer to quotation stage with. So maybe people who came in via the website. Maybe people who had a first meeting with us but never went as far as a proposal. What happened to them? There must have been something to make them inquire about us in the first place, say yes to a meeting, go through our website, whatever it may be. We didn't even get to proposal stage with these people. So perhaps a more accurate description might not be prospects, but suspects, as we use in business development circles. What about those ones who were initially just inquired and we couldn't get on the phone, or we only got one meeting with? There's our fifth stage right there. Our sixth stage is then our dream ones, the wish list. What businesses locally, if we had carte blanche, would we want to act for? And why would we want to act for them? Is it because it would increase our credibility? Is it because the fees are tremendous? Is it because we have a speciality in their niche? What is it? That wish list then is part of the opportunity dump. We grade it in the same way, we look at it in the same way, and we decide how important it is. What we must bear in mind on the wish list is that those are typically slow burn opportunities. That's the long game right there. Those are the ones we have to spend a long time dating and building a relationship with to get any kind of traction with. But nevertheless, very, very valuable when they come on board. So let's build our wish list into our opportunity dump and make sure that we've got a lot of businesses there that we would ideally love to work with. And then the seventh one to throw in, I said there'd be 7 avenues. The seventh one is then formal proactive marketing. And this can come in so many different shapes and sizes. I had a number of years at a telemarketer where I saw telemarketing work extremely effectively. And I know that done right, with a practice who knows how to win work, a telemarketer who knows how to create a good opportunity, and a business that's receptive to the message, telemarketing works extremely well. It might be direct mail that you do. It might be seminars that you do. You might hold golf days. You might hold any number of different marketing strategies. But that is where we can then boost our pipeline quickly. If those other 6 avenues haven't yielded a huge list and we want a bigger list, then proactive marketing is a fast way to turn on the tap and fill up the rest of the bucket there in our opportunity dump and get that pipeline filled up quickly. So proactive marketing is then something that we can employ once we're ready to handle the inquiries that the proactive marketing actually generates. And that's my big concern. It works extremely well, but so many firms feel it doesn't work well because they weren't ready for it. Get ready for it first before you go into the proactive marketing. And when you are, pay close attention to it, because I have seen over a decade's worth of successful proactive marketing for CPA firms. It definitely works. So, we build the pipeline via our opportunity dump, and by this stage we should have a lot of opportunities that we can start working on that we've graded, and we have an order of priority to them. Now I would recommend that there are never any more than 12 in your top list, in the ones you really want to go after, because with the other time constraints that are on you, you can't work on these prospects effectively and well when you've got too many of them. You can't date 12 people particularly well. 1 takes up a lot of effort, never mind 12. So let's make sure that we've got the right mix from all sources and we're working on them in a proactive way, but in an intelligent way, so that we don't spread ourselves too thin. That's the hard work done. Our master key is in the lock and it's unlocking the door beautifully now. What we have to do after that are 2 things. The first one is to monitor, manage, and marvel at the results. We make sure that that pipeline never gets too empty and dry. We make sure that those priorities are changing according to what's actually happening with the prospects, and we keep that account score updated at all times. And then we enjoy the success and enjoy the results that actually come in as a result. So once we have those, we have 9 of our 10 elements of value that I promised we would deliver today. Monitoring and improving the process as a fluid process is critical to any business development effort. The final part is avoiding the pitfalls, the typical mistakes that happen all the time. Because business development, relationship building, selling, call it what you will, can be very unfamiliar to CPA firms, then we have some problems at times with repeated mistakes, let's call them, that we should really be avoiding. And I'd like to go into those 10 faux pas in a second, but first of all, Damien, could I ask you please to throw another poll in here?
Yeah, absolutely, Martin. Let's go with the third poll question. What do you find most challenging about winning non-referred work? So this is the work that comes through that pipeline development rather than through referrals. Is it quoting the right fee? Is it understanding the client's real problem? Communicating what makes us different? Or communicating why they should switch? And then other is the alternate. There's always an other category for accounting firms. And if you do have another, I would just really encourage you to type into that question or the chat box on the GoToWebinar area just what it is, that other that comes through. But interestingly, only 60% have voted. So again, remember, folks, for CPE, we need to get your participation and prove that you haven't popped out for a nicotine or caffeine break. Martin, we're looking at about 90% are saying communicating what makes us different. 10%, well, we've come down a bit. So 80% communicating what makes us different. 10% quoting the right fee. And then 10% communicating why they should switch. So we'll just leave it open for 5 more seconds, and let's close that there. But final results there, Martin. 80% have said, what do you find most challenging? It's communicating what makes us different. 10% the fee, and then 10% communicating why they should switch.
That's great, Damien. Thank you very much. That differentiation issue followed by pricing issue are perhaps 2 webinars in their own right. But they are certainly big issues, but they're not complicated problems to solve. Nothing is complicated when we understand how. And differentiation is actually easier than you might think. And that's something perhaps that we'll tackle another time. Pricing, that's always a tricky one, but there are certain measures that can be employed to make sure you get the price right. Okay. So thank you very much for everyone for participating in these polls, by the way. This is tremendous feedback for us and really helps us to understand where the challenges exist. I mentioned there was going to be the 10 things to avoid, the repeated mistakes. I call them the faux pas, the things that we do all the time that stops us from being successful in bringing work on board. And here they are. The top one is losing control of the process of the sale, or losing control of the building of the relationship, we might say. So when we've gone out with that very attractive person on our first date, and we really would like to see them again, and they say, yeah, I'll give you a call sometime. And we allow that to happen, and they never call back. Do we call them? Do they not like us? Are we being a nuisance? Well, we don't know. Same is true in selling. You know, if we really like that first meeting and we feel we've got value to offer, let's book another meeting. Let's get a second date. Otherwise, we're going to lose control of it. Other things are going to come up in their life which are take priority over talking to us, and our importance is going to diminish down the priority scale. So the major faux pas is losing control. And I can already hear in my head some concerns that might be being raised at this point. Well, Martin, what happens if they refuse a second date? What happens if their diary isn't with them? What happens if... Well, again, those are things that if you'd like to put together, if you'd like to take up our offer on the teleconference series, I'd be delighted to attack issues like that. But losing control is the major faux pas, and that's the thing that we get wrong all the time. Behind that is emailing a proposal. Okay? If you think about that, even if the prospect asked you to email the proposal, let's say that this is a $20,000 opportunity that you're emailing through. What happens if the proposal does not communicate $20,000 worth of value? What happens if the person reading it doesn't understand £20,000 worth of value? What happens if there's a spelling mistake in there? What happens if we misunderstood an instruction they gave us? We lose control by emailing the proposal. We don't get a chance to present it. We don't get a chance to see what they're doing as they react to the points we're bringing out in it. We lose the opportunity to understand what they don't like. And again, they won't always tell us what they don't like. So if we email the proposal, we don't know what's happened to it. We don't know if it's been read. We don't know if it's been liked. We don't know if it's been hated. We don't know if we're too cheap, too expensive. Let's not email a proposal. Let's present a proposal so that we can really underpin the value by interpreting the words in that proposal or quote into our own presentation style and make sure they link with the value that that business is looking for from us. The next one is then trying to chase by phone. It's the easiest thing in the world to not take a phone call and to say, we'll get the message through to him and he'll call you back. She's in a meeting right now. As soon as she's out, we'll tell her that you called and we'll get her to call you back. And then they don't. So what happened? Did that message get through? Did they just got too busy? Did they go into another meeting? Did the message never get communicated? So we don't know. So chasing by phone is not the way to go with this. We need another meeting. One of the big issues that we talked about in the webinar on Thursday was appealing to the logical argument of selling the features of what we do, the technical aspects of what we do. But that's not what people buy. They buy the benefits that those technical features provide. So not the tax planning, but the savings and what we can do with those savings. So not the payroll function that you've got, but what we can do with the time we've saved by outsourcing our payroll to that CPA firm, and what that now translates to in terms of new business development for us, the client. So we must stop selling features and think about the benefits. And the difference is features are what we do, benefits are what it means to them if we do it. Okay? A big bugbear of mine is lowballing fees. For some reason there exists in our mind this thought process that if we're cheap, we'll get the work. And it may be true, but it's not going to build a profitable practice. So lowballing fees simply creates an environment of people who think they can ask you to discount and you will discount. Because that's what we set as the expectation right in the initial dating or sales process. Please let's avoid lowballing fees. Let's charge the value we want to get from that work, and if they have a problem with it, we can deal with that, but let's at least not go in there too cheap in the first place. Another big issue with lowballing is that if you offer an awful lot of service and value for very little price, typically people don't believe it, and they think there's something wrong here because they can't possibly do all that work for that price. I'm starting to doubt the sincerity and integrity of this firm. So that happens. They won't tell you it happens, but it happens. So please, let's not lowball for no good reason. One of the things we get is we get to the point where the proposal's great, the first meeting was great, the second date's great, and everything has been answered, and then we just allow something just to peter out and just to evaporate. We don't actually ask, okay, so based on that, Mr. Potential Client, Mrs. Potential Client, would you like to come on board with us as a new client? How would you feel about us working with you starting next week? When would you like to get started on this? Do you see any reason why we can't get a relationship set up quite quickly now? All of these ways allow us to ask for the business, because if we have handled everything that needs to be handled, there's nothing left to do except ask for the business. We've earned the right. This traditional thing that we see a lot of as well, I don't know how commonplace this is in the States. It happens quite a bit with the firms I talk to in the US and work with, but it's very, very regular over here in the UK, which is that all things go well, and we don't get that second meeting, that second date, but they say, tell you what, instead of having a second meeting, why don't I get my books and records across to you so you can see what we've been doing for the last few years, and that will help you formulate the proposal that you send us. Well, first of all, we're not going to send that proposal, we're going to deliver it by person, and second of all, those books and records don't show. And then we come back to number 3 there, chasing by phone, because did they send them? Did they get lost in the mail? Or did they not get around to it? Or are we going to bug them by chasing them now? Should we leave it another week? Are they going to remember us in 3 weeks? It's another way of losing control, so we mustn't do that. We must say, okay, great. Why don't you get those books and records across to us? That's great. Let's set up a second meeting while we're here. We'll get that in a diary. If you could get the books and records to us before that, in between those times, I'll make sure I've seen them by the time that second meeting comes round. Okay? So we mustn't allow that to stop us. We also sometimes ignore how powerful and influential the PA is to the managing director, how influential the financial director is, who isn't necessarily the signatory or the authorizing body for the deal, the senior manager or the production manager in the business, who we think is just an employee of the firm. It might be the daughter or son or nephew or cousin or auntie of the owner. We need to be aware of who influences our decision maker and make sure that somehow we have some positive impact on them too, because they can have an impact on whether we get engaged or not to win a piece of work, and we may not have been able to influence them. Let's make sure we know who influences the owner of the business and how we can positively influence them. Weak proposals are as bad as a strong email proposal. So weak proposals are ones that don't communicate the value, that simply says, we will undertake this for you, X, Y, and Z, it's this much money, will you come on board please? I'll call you in the next 3 days to see if you want to join us. No reason to change given. Simply, yes, we can do some work, yes, that's how much we're going to charge, and so people are making their decision on, okay, do I like the look of them, how much do they cost, how far away are they? It's not a value proposition. It's simply how much do I hate my current CPA? Unlikely to win a piece of work. And finally, giving away the answers. So if it was me, the CPA, in front of a potential client, and the potential client said to me, hey, you know what, Martin, something that we don't get any tax planning advice here. You know, this is a situation that we've got this year, and I'd like to get your view on this. How could you, how could I save some money here, and how could I tax plan efficiently? If we tell them how to do that, then the very first thing they're going to do is go back to their current accountant and make sure that that current accountant does it for them, because we've just removed the need for them to change. And I remember on an old US TV series called Married with Children, Kelly Bundy, the daughter, who never quite got the it was never quite the brightest person, got a quote wrong and said, why on earth would they buy the cow when they can get the eggs for free? And of course she meant the milk. Why on earth would they buy the cow if they can get the milk for free? And that's what we're talking about in giving away answers. A better answer there is to say, yeah, that's a very, very good point you've raised there, Mrs. Potential Client. And, you know, we help a huge number of our clients save tax effectively to give them a lot of opportunity to do different things with the funds that they've saved. And one of the first things we'd do if we were appointed your CPA would be to tackle that issue for you. We'd make that our priority. But just as I wouldn't expect you to tell us the secret behind your production here and why you have the top selling widgets in the US, similarly, we always don't, you wouldn't expect us to give away why we are the top CPA in the area, top CPA firm in the area. So I can assure you that that's something that we do, and I'm very happy to give you case studies and testimonials and references, people you can speak to who are our clients who we've solved that exact problem for. And if we come on board as your advisor, it's the first thing we'll tackle for you. So on that basis, we've then handled the question, we've given a reasonable reason why they shouldn't pursue that question any further, and we haven't given away the answer. So there we are, the 10 faux pas. And before we close up on the final slide, I'd like to ask Damien if he'd be kind enough to run our final poll, and we'll pull this all together into one big summary.
Perfect. So there's the final poll there for you. If you were one of your prospective clients, why would you choose your firm? Is it because of price? Is it because of expertise of the partners, good industry specialization, great client service, or other? And again, if you do have an other, please let us know what that other is. So it looks like a third of the audience are coming in with great client service is why your prospective clients would choose your firm. I would challenge, I'm not sure what Martin's thoughts are, but I'd say 100% of the firms on this call would be offering great client service. And I would suggest that we need to go something stronger when we look at how we differentiate ourselves. 10% have replied with expertise to the partners, 10% have replied with good industry specialization, 70% have said great client service, which, as I said, I'm not sure if that's strong enough for a reason to actually switch. And then 10% have said other, and then Cherie replied with other, her philosophical alignment and chemistry, which I thought was an interesting response.
Beautiful, beautiful.
But what do you think about that 70% who have said great client service, Martin?
There seems to be a contradiction, doesn't there, with a poll that says we don't know how to differentiate, and yet we're differentiated by great client service. So, I mean, these polls are here just to learn, for us to learn and to understand where each firm is at the moment. But great client service, if we know why we offer great client service, then we can differentiate because we know why it's great as opposed to good or normal or average or mediocre or widespread. We know how to differentiate on that basis because we clearly know what great service equals. But I would go with Cherie's comment, a philosophical alignment. In other words, see things the same way, have empathy, have rapport, and Cherie, I apologize to you if I'm misquoting you here, but that's what I believe you're talking about. Where we can deliver that, that is when the prospective client has perception of it being great client service because somebody's tuned into their business. And that's how I'd interpret that personally. So, let's tie this all together. I said there would be 10 pieces of value, and we're there. I'd now like you to grab a pen and piece of paper or your tablet or whatever you've got that you wish to record on, and just do some things right now to get started. So there's how we unlock the master key. So let's remember, master key is doing something, overcoming failure to implement, but the secret behind the secret is unlocking that door by having a setup that works. And there's 10 ideas of how we can have a setup that works. Okay, so things we can do right now to get ahead. If you've got a piece of paper, a question for you to ask yourself. We, CPA firm, or we, individual, will open up opportunity sources for new business if. And I want you to give your own answers there, please, as to what you would do. Okay, so that might be, we'll open up our opportunity sources if we just hire that marketer that we said we were going to hire last year, or if we just talk to our referral sources like we promised we would, or if we just do an opportunity dump. We will build our pipeline if. Give yourself some options there. Those opportunity sources will turn into prospective clients if. So that might be if we avoid those 10 faux pas that Martin just explained were repeated mistakes, or if we fully implement 2020's tax tips and tools and other great resources that they give us, or whatever it may be. We will turn them into prospective clients if. And you put down your own interpretation as to what you think it's going to take. One way we can make sure we don't get apathetic and suffer from that massive disease that spreads throughout the nation, failure to implement, is how are you going to do it? I said be accountable to somebody, but how are you actually going to do it? What's going to work for you? How are you going to make sure you don't just simply forget this content today and do nothing about it? Now going to one of the poll questions here. One thing that genuinely gives us a competitive advantage in our firm is, and if you're going to answer great client service to this question, then please qualify it. What do you mean, great client service? Is that being available 24/7? Is that proactively reading the journals of the industries that most of your clients are in? Is that proactively advising the client rather than waiting for them to ask for questions? What is your great client service? And if it's not great client service, what gives you that competitive advantage, do you believe? And then finally, we understand that the main firm priorities are, if by answering this question, business development is not in your top 3, then don't be spending a lot of time on business development or change your priorities. because what you'll find very difficult to implement is a business development system or infrastructure when that's not a priority of the firm or its leaders. So it may be maintain the status quo. It may be don't jeopardize what we've already got. It may be move into new premises. But if business development is in your top 3, okay, then you've got a good chance of being able to build an infrastructure this year. So there's things straight away that you know you can do as a result of this webinar that gets things moving and gets you to overcome failure to implement. So we said there'd be 60 minutes, we're just slightly over. 10 pieces of value, I hope those have become evident. The 4 polls and the one underlying rule is do it. Do something, anything. Just overcome that failure to implement. By doing that, you'll be ahead of 95% of your competitors. I'd like to thank 2020 and Damien today for the opportunity to speak with you. I hope that's been of value to you. And like I say, if we can assist any further, please let Damien or myself know. But thank you very much today, Damien. Back to you.
Martin, thank you very much. That being held accountable is one very important thing, and if you want somebody to hold you accountable, we can do that for you as well. Martin, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Folks, keep an eye out for the email from Citrix Online or GoToWebinar at Citrix Online. That will have the survey, so an opportunity to provide feedback. I will get today's webinar and last week's webinars posted to our YouTube channel today. So keep an eye out for that. And I will also get CPE done today, and I'll do it in that order, just so in the CPE email I can let you know where exactly to find those video recordings. Martin, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Jump online, find out when the next webinar is. I believe it's next week. We're off to Winning Clients is Everything this week, or Winning is Everything this week. Anything we can do to help, please let us know. And I believe, Martin, you said you'll share the slides with us. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I'll have those across to you ASAP.
Okay, perfect. Folks, thanks very much. Have a wonderful day and have a wonderful week. Thank you.